Hello, this is part 2 in a series of videos on what was happening on January 6, 2021, when people broke in to the White House after Donald Trump gave a lecture outside, gave a speech, I should say, outside, that got people fired up, and he encouraged them to walk towards the White House, and they ended up breaking in and overpowering the police, and dramatic event in the history of the United States. You do not need to watch part 1 in the series. If you're interested in this part of the video, it's fine to just jump in here. Now, how does Donald Trump's chart work into this? Number one, remember we're looking at 3 or more planets. 2 planets, in other words, an aspect. Suppose transiting Sun is conjunct his moon or something. Is that important? Yes. Is it very important? Well, it does not describe the theme. The themes, the storyline, the narrative, what's going on. Are we having a party? Are we having a fight? Are we having people studying in a library? What's going on requires 3 or more planets. 2 planets, just a transit, will highlight something specific. It can be an event, but within the context of the storyline. The storyline here is that people broke in to the White House. They overpowered the police. It became violent. People died. There were injuries. That storyline is going to involve 3 or more planets. Okay, now, let me mention also, I'm putting emphasis on the Trump supporters and Donald Trump. I'm making this video 4 days after the event on January 10th. In the early morning hours of January 10th, I'm making this video. And at this moment, there are some people are saying, oh, there were Antifa and Black Lives Matter people were instigating it. I'm not taking that seriously at this point, and I think that over time it'll become obvious that this is really about Trump supporters and the Trump movement, and more specifically, it's about the belief that there was election fraud, and their way of thinking is that we should not allow somebody to become president when they were elected through fraud. They believe this. This is not just something they're making up. That's what's going on. That's what's motivating people. That's the main thing going on. If you don't agree with that, fine, but I think over time, as people listen to this further in the future, it will become obvious that that is the fundamental dynamic of what's happening. Now, Trump's 13 vibration chart. Let's look at it. Okay, here's Donald Trump. And let's look at his, I didn't even bring it up, so let me bring it up, his 13 vibration chart. There it is. Nothing spectacular. I'm not seeing extremely strong 3 or 4 planets. I do see Jupiter-Saturn conjunction and a Neptune-Pluto conjunction with quincunxes. But it's not rock solid. I mean, Neptune is quincunx Jupiter, Pluto is quincunx Saturn, but it's not a tightly connected 3 planets. If I look at the midpoint structures, well, I see a lot going on there. Nothing really that strong. Nothing to get really excited about here. So what does that mean? I do see a strong red dashed line, and remember that 52 vibration is very strong. Well, remember if you watched part 1. If you watched part 1, I emphasized 13 vibration and 13 times 4, 52, both of those. So far, as we look at Donald Trump's 13 vibration, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There's this chart where there's not a lot going on. This is a huge event. This is huge. When there's a huge event, there should be huge configurations. We have very strict requirements for vibrational astrology. We do not want to just justify our beliefs. We don't want to make things up. And we learn most from things that do not work. Vibrational astrology is not going to always work. So we just admit. Trump should have strong 13 vibration. He does not. Maybe we were wrong in guessing 13 vibration. But before we give up on 13 vibration, let's look at 52. Because in our part 1 of the series, we identified 2 main things going on, the 13 and the 13 times 4. Let's take a look at it. So I want to just emphasize, these high criteria we have. So here's Donald Trump's 52 vibration. Do we see anything strong here? Well, we see Mercury opposition Pluto, a big quincunx. We see some big dashed red lines. No, we are not seeing anything super powerful. There's a Mercury-Uranus conjunction. Super powerful means 3 planets, boom, together. Something going on. Well, we're almost ready to give up on Trump having strong 13 vibration. Last thing we can check for now would be, let's look at the midpoints. Because as I emphasized in part 1 of this series, there are aspects and there are midpoint structures. Maybe there's something going on there. Whoa! Holy moly! Wow! I've got some additional aspects here. Let me just do conjunctions and oppositions with a 1.5 degree orb. Oh, it looked like so much because I had other aspects in there. Okay, but let's look at this. I'll stretch this out so you can read it. Does anything stand out here? Yes, we're seeing some big things going on. We're seeing Uranus making 2 midpoint structures. Let me pull up a pop-up wheel quickly. And Uranus is at the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. There's Sun and Jupiter. It's right at the midpoint, opposition Sun and Jupiter. And Venus-Pluto, which are over here. That's called a midpoint isotrap. It's about 0.5 degree orb is the largest one, 34-minute, 10-minute orb. Those are small orbs. It doesn't look extremely powerful, but if you've been studying vibrational astrology for a while, midpoint isotraps are huge. If a planet makes 2 direct midpoint structures and the largest one is only about 0.5 degree orb, huge. So there's a very powerful thing going on here. Here's another midpoint isotrap. Jupiter at Mars, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. This one not as powerful. The Uranus, Pluto is a little bit weak, over 1 degree. And there are other midpoints. And do we see midpoint structures with similar planets? It looks like we do. Here's a Jupiter-Uranus, and Jupiter and Uranus are here. Here's Sun and Jupiter. Uranus is at Sun-Jupiter, and Sun is at Jupiter-Saturn. So when you see 2 planets are the same, that's powerful. Let me show you. Uranus at Sun-Jupiter. What are the 3 planets? Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. Here's Sun, Jupiter, Saturn. 2 planets in common. Excuse me. That makes a powerful thing. Looks like there's powerful midpoint things going on. In the slide, I have here something that looks like a mess. I'm showing the midpoint structures. So to give you an idea, let's follow this through. Over here in the upper left, I'm showing Jupiter and Saturn. Here's Jupiter at 7 Libra, Saturn at 8 Virgo. They're almost 30 degrees apart. 7 and 8 degrees of Virgo and Libra. Sun at 22 Pisces is opposition the midpoint. If we go back to the previous slide, no, let me just go back to Sirius. There's the Sun at Jupiter, Saturn, 43-minute orb. That's definitely there, 43-minute orb. So the Sun is opposition Jupiter, Saturn. Now, here's the rule. if I add one more planet and I get a midpoint structure, it's very powerful. I'm creating a system of midpoints. And Uranus is opposition Sun Jupiter. So Sun is opposition Jupiter Saturn, Uranus is opposition Sun Jupiter. And then if I add one more planet, oh, I've got a list of it here. Let me move my picture out of the way for a moment. Sun is opposition Jupiter Saturn, and I put Sun and Jupiter in bold. I add Uranus to Sun and Jupiter. I got Uranus opposition Sun Jupiter. Now I've got Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus, those four planets making two midpoint structures. If I add Pluto and I take Jupiter and Uranus, I get Jupiter opposition Uranus Pluto. That's here, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto. These black lines coming from Pluto to Jupiter and from Uranus to Jupiter. It looks like a tangle because it is a tangle. It is, and tangle's not the best word because it's beautiful. It's a woven tapestry of resonances. Midpoint structures are resonances. Planets have the same angular distance from each other. The planet in the midpoint has the same distance from the other two. There's resonances. Sun is at a resonance point, midpoint of Jupiter and Saturn. Uranus, Sun at the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. Jupiter at the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. Now I've got Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. 5 planets, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto, making 3 midpoint structures. Then I can add a 6th planet, Neptune. Where is Neptune? Over here. See these black lines coming from Saturn? Neptune is at the Saturn-Uranus midpoint. 4 midpoint structures out of 6 planets. This is huge. Now, when you get a lot of midpoint structures that are created by just continuing to add one more planet, add one more planet, add one more planet, and you get another midpoint structure, that is extremely powerful. And in addition to that, we have 2 midpoint isotraps, the Jupiter opposition Mars-Neptune. Now remember, I've got Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. So I've got Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. 6 planets. Now I can add Mars to the mix. Jupiter and Neptune are already in here. I add one more planet, Mars. That's over here. I put that in green. Jupiter at Mars, Neptune. And notice Jupiter appears twice on the left side. Jupiter's at Uranus, Pluto, and at Mars, Neptune. That's the midpoint isotrap. Now I add Venus, because I already have Uranus and Pluto in this list, and I have Uranus opposition Venus, Pluto. That is this blue. Okay, it's very simple. That sounds confusing, it's simple. All I'm saying is this. Find a midpoint structure. If you add one more planet, in addition to the 3 planets in that midpoint structure, you add a 4th planet and you get another midpoint structure, that creates a powerful, very powerful 4-planet system. And then I add another planet and another planet. And what happens here is I have 6 midpoint structures created from 8 planets. There are only 10 planets. Almost every planet is getting pulled into this. Huge, huge, huge system of midpoint structures. And what does it mean? Sun at Jupiter, Saturn. Organization, business, administration. For what? For 52 vibration. That means that Donald Trump has a talent, we can call it, a energy flow, a motivation, a potential for business success in something that is different, that's a bit of a new paradigm, that's very individualistic, That's not just following a standard cookie cutter approach, because it's 52 vibration. He can organize, lead this. And so he is the leader of the Republican Party, which is a 13 vibration party, and he does it very effectively. Now, am I saying this is good? No, I'm not. Hitler did things effectively. What I'm saying is that he administrates and organizes well. Now, you may say, no, he doesn't administrate well. Well, if he didn't administrate well, how did he get all these votes? How did he become president? You have to get inside the energy and realize that people are complex. Someone can be delusional in one aspect. They can be not smart in one way, and they can be very good in another way. That's another concept in vibrational astrology. People are complex. There's one part of Donald Trump where he knows how to effectively do things, and he orchestrated this event on January 6th. He knew what he was doing. He knew that he was getting people fired up. He's not feeling good that Biden is getting put in as president and people are just accepting. He really thinks, whether it's delusional or not, he really thinks that there's voter fraud. And he's organized and he's orchestrated and he's designed a way to make a strong statement against it. And it works very effectively. He's made his statement. He's gotten a strong following. He's made an impact. He's not going quietly into the night. Now, at this point, he can bow out and leave. He's made his point and he's gotten support for it. I hope you can feel what I'm saying and remove the judgment about good and bad. Well, many of you know that I happen to be what we call in America on the liberal side of things. I'm not a Trump supporter. It's irrelevant. Forget about it. Just feel the energy flow. Okay. Now, optimism. Look at all this Jupiter-Uranus energy. Uranus, its sun, Jupiter. Optimism. Upbeat. Trump is not a stereotypical boring politician wearing, gray suits, so to speak, with a humdrum, very political point of view. He's in a way personable, upbeat, lively, interesting. So he gets people upbeat. A lot of Jupiter-Uranus energy. Neptune at Saturn. Uranus is an iconoclast. It's a radical. So he's revolutionary. There's that aspect to what he's doing. And the Uranus of Venus Pluto is like a rock star. And he's got this kind of rock star feeling. Jupiter, Mars, Neptune, a dreamer, an optimist. So all of this is going on, and as I put in the bottom here, for good or evil. This is it, my friends. This chart that we're looking at with all these black lines and blue and green lines with arrows, that's it. That's Donald Trump. That's the energy behind his speech and his motivating the people to move into the White House. And if I'm right that this is it, this vibrational astrology is a big breakthrough. It's a new level of insight into what's going on. So we found it. This is it. Now, there's one more thing for us to have more confidence that this is it. Is that if this is it, if this configuration is one of the primary things, fundamental things, behind Donald Trump's speech that day, on that day, January 6th, and motivating the people and getting them charged up to where they march into the White House and they get so charged up, even maybe more than he even imagined that they would, to where they break in and kind of violently stand up for what they believe in. Then the 13 vibration, or more specifically 52 vibration, we need to do a bi-wheel of the 52 vibration chart for 3 p.m. that we're looking at on January 6th. with his 52 vibration chart. And what are we going to look for? Especially midpoint structures more than aspects. Why midpoint structures? Because it's midpoint structures that are the power of his chart, that are the power of Donald Trump's 52 vibration. So I'm expecting transiting planets, maybe a transiting planet moves in between Jupiter and Uranus. Takes Jupiter, because Jupiter and Uranus shows up a few times here. Shows up here, Uranus at Sun, Jupiter, Jupiter at Uranus, Pluto. Excuse me. Uranus, Pluto shows up a few times. So a planet coming between Jupiter and Uranus, for example, or between between Uranus and Pluto, that would be Jupiter. Maybe a planet on his Jupiter. Things like that, or a planet between Sun and Uranus. If planets come in between these two, or exactly conjunct one of them, to make the same midpoint structures, that would make sense. Because on that day, he's charged up, he succeeds. It must be getting ignited for this to happen. If this was not happening, then the break-in of the White House, the violence that occurred, everything else would not have happened. It wasn't guaranteed to happen. There was the potential. The police weren't even ready for it. They didn't expect it. Why did it happen? The transits must have been just right. It's like you have paper and a match, and boom, it took off. That match that ignited it means that the transits ignited this configuration. They would have had to. And if I don't see it, then I lose confidence in my astrological theory. We have very high requirements and expectations for vibrational astrology. It has to work. We can't make stuff up. We can't fake it. We can't exaggerate it. If this is what's going on, that must be happening. So we do a bi-wheel. Well, let me show you. We do a bi-wheel. Let me drag this back. And we also look at the midpoints between the charts. So let me see. I want to go to the January 6th 52 vibration. There's the chart wheel for 52 vibration. And pull up a bi-wheel. There's the bi-wheel. But I'm really interested in the midpoint structures. And I go up here to midpoints. I select midpoint comparison, and which I've already done, and I get this. I can drag this out so you can see it better. And this shows a comparison of the event, the January 6th event at 3 p.m. I'm calling it Capitol Building, the Capitol Building event, the break into the Capitol Building, 50-second vibration of the event chart to the 50-second vibration of Trump. And we do have a birth time for Trump, so this is going to be accurate. And there's his planets to the Capitol Building midpoints, the Capitol Building to the event, I can call it the event to his midpoints, the event planets to his midpoints, and what we call mixed midpoint structures. So, for example, this is telling us that blue is Donald Trump, red is the event. So this is telling me that Donald Trump's sun is at the midpoint of his own Saturn and the event Pluto. Well, I made a diagram of this. I took the bi-wheel, saved it to file, and drew in the lines. I think that's what I did. Let me double check here. Let's go to the next slide. Yes, here it is. Here it is. Transiting Pluto is exactly on his Jupiter. 14-minute orb. Transiting Pluto. This is the 52 vibration event chart with the 52 vibration natal chart. Is right on Jupiter. In fact, I can go to the wheel. Here it is. And I can do the time adjust. Go 1 hour into the future. And now the orb is 18 minutes. Go back. It's 14 minutes. So Pluto has moved 4 minutes in 1 hour. How could Pluto move 4 minutes in 1 hour? Because we're in the 52 vibration chart. Everything's moving 52 times faster. So over this time period, Pluto is very tightly, probably that whole day, Pluto is tightly conjunct Jupiter, at least for about half a day. Pluto is very tightly conjunct Jupiter. Okay, let me pull this back again and go to my slide. Oh, we'll cancel out of this. Okay, so what I have here on the slide is I'm showing all these midpoint structures that in his natal chart, Jupiter is at the Mars-Neptune midpoint and transiting Pluto is at his Mars-Neptune midpoint. And remember I said, let me show you this one. This is very straightforward. I just said, what if a planet, a transiting planet is in between, I said his Jupiter and Uranus. That's not exactly what's happening is that the transiting sun is in between natal Jupiter and transiting Uranus. Sun at Jupiter, Uranus. And these arrows show us that transiting Uranus is at the midpoint of transiting Sun and natal Mars. So there are all of these midpoint structures, planets coming directly in between, reinforcing the same kinds of midpoint structures that are in Donald Trump's natal chart. Okay, and here I summarize some of the themes going on. Let's take a deep breath and think about this. So what I'm saying is that transiting Sun, up here at 29 Leo, transiting Uranus, excuse me, at 20 degrees Cancer, transiting Pluto at 7 degrees Libra, these three transiting planets have moved into spots. They are now at points, excuse me, in this 52 vibration chart that create these midpoint structures. So, for example, transiting Pluto over here is conjunct natal Jupiter with only a 14-minute orb. So all of the midpoint structures in Trump's chart with Jupiter also happen to Pluto. So Jupiter is making a lot of two direct midpoint structures. It's a focal planet of a midpoint isotrap. Pluto is also at that focal point. Transiting Sun over here is conjunct natal Jupiter and transiting Uranus, similar to Trump's Uranus at Sun Jupiter. So Trump has a Sun Jupiter Uranus midpoint configuration, Uranus at Sun Jupiter, and by transit there's a Sun Jupiter Uranus. Similarly, Trump in his birth chart has Sun opposition Jupiter Saturn midpoint, and by transiting Jupiter over here is opposition the transiting Sun and natal Saturn. So you're getting repeating themes: Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. Same kinds of midpoint structures formed between the natal and transiting planets. The point is this: the same kind of midpoint structures that are in Donald Trump's natal chart are also occurring between the transiting planets and the natal planets, and there is this beautiful, intricate tapestry going on that's getting magnified. And that is what happened on January 6th. There is a beautiful, intricate, resonating system, a music of the spheres. All of this means same angles, means resonance. All this huge resonance in Trump's natal chart is getting magnified by increasing resonance, by transiting Sun, transiting Pluto, transiting Uranus, moving directly between the same planets. Sun, Jupiter, Uranus, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn. This is what's happening. And this is what caused the break-in, the storming of the White House. We know the motivation. Now, from the outside, it might look like a Mars, Saturn, Uranus. It's violence. But to understand what's going on, it's not a Mars, Saturn, Uranus so much. It's people enthralled people enthusiastic, people on fire, passionate, fervent about 13 vibration, optimistic, visionary, won't compromise, make their own rules. They often say, the Trump supporters, the White House is our house. Or a lot of Americans say that. It's our house. How dare they use election fraud and try to take it from, this is our house, I'm going to claim it. This is the feeling, right or wrong, whether it's delusional or not. That is what happened. And we see how successful this movement is by the power and strength of the planetary configurations. So, strong planetary configurations, many planets tightly connected, will succeed for good or for evil. Humans decide whether something is good or evil. The planets do not. Let me say that again. We humans know in our hearts, and we decide what's good and evil. The planets are just forces. So when it rains or the sun comes out, we may say, oh, this is good, this is wonderful, because I'm planning to have an outdoor event today. Or it rains and hasn't rained in a while and my garden needs rain. I say, this is wonderful. But the forces that make the rain and that make the sun, they're just forces of nature. They're not inherently good or bad. They're all good. We need rain. Rain is good. Sun is good. It's whether it fits into our life and how we deal with it that makes it good or bad. So these powerful planetary configurations indicate the success, the power, the momentum, the huge event, the break-in to the White House. This is enormous that this would happen, that the speech, that the energy, that the building, the millions of people supporting it, whether it's good or bad, is something we need to decide. And it's, in astrology, we put too much emphasis, Saturn's a malefic, this is a benefic. The planets are all benefic. They're doing what they need to do. My philosophy is that what makes something benefic is, does it heal? Does it uplift? Does it enlighten? Does it educate everyone? Does it reach out? Well, no event is going to heal everyone. But in other words, it's not just about us. It's everyone around us. It's the whole world. Does it uplift us as a family living on planet Earth? That's what makes it good. And each one of us decides whether what Trump is doing is good or bad. Okay. I just want to emphasize that. All right. So in vibrational astrology, we don't have the kind of emphasis in other forms of astrology that this is good or this is bad. We're seeing forces. Vibrational astrology is more like a science that just sees what the forces and momentums are. And then there's more to life than astrology. There's us as human beings that need to have some maturity of soul development and, a balanced and full awareness that we're employing all of our faculties to determine what's going to work well and what's going to heal and improve and what is not. Okay, I want to go back to this slide I skipped over. Excuse me. This one, that there is a beautiful and intricate cosmic tapestry. This exquisite tapestry is being discovered only in recent years. Most astrologers are not aware of this beautiful cosmic tapestry, and as evidence grows, vibrational astrology will become widespread. So what I'm showing you in these videos, in this series of videos on January 6, 2021, and I will make a forecast about January 20 at the end of this series of videos, what I'm showing here is a new kind of astrology. I have here important. The analytical tools of vibrational astrology are accurate enough to be used in real world situations. That's what I'm showing, is that we can use these tools to understand what's going on. If we were consulted, we could have alerted security about the concern. We could see that these resonances are going on, and we will show that there is concern for January 20th. There will be some violence of a different kind on January 20th, and so I will share that. So our analysis is not always correct, but it improves our probability of foreseeing situations. Right? I hope all that makes sense. Just kind of summarizing where we're at and what's going on with vibrational astrology. Okay. Here is the midpoint comparison, which I showed you in the program here. And what I did is I saved it to file. I just click on Save to File and then click on View in Graphics Program. It comes up in the Windows Paint program. And then I put red boxes around the midpoint structures with similar planets, and I put a light blue box around some others. For example, let me show you this light blue box, and I think then we're ready. Yeah, perfect. This is my last slide, and then in the next video in the series, we'll talk about Ashley Babbitt, which is quite interesting as well. So this video is about Trump. Let me show you one thing here. See this Mercury at Uranus? Donald Trump's Mercury. Maybe I'll show it to you here. Stretch it out so you can see it. Stretch this out, make it big. This one right here, Mercury, if you see my cursor towards the bottom of this window, Mercury is blue, means Donald Trump is in between his Uranus and the event Uranus. Let's look at it in the bi-wheel. Here's Donald Trump's Mercury at 10 Cancer in his 52 vibration chart. Inner ring, Donald Trump, 52nd harmonic. There's his Mercury 10 Cancer. His Uranus in 52 vibration is 0 Cancer. So it's 10 degrees, almost 10 degrees, 10 minutes, almost exactly 10 degrees. If we go another 10 degrees, we're at 20 Cancer. In fact, if we go 10 degrees and 10 minutes, we're at 10 Cancer, 46, almost exactly where transiting Uranus is. Donald Trump's Mercury is directly at the midpoint of his own Uranus and the transiting Uranus. This is powerful. In a comparison of two people or in transits, when one planet ends up at the midpoint of the same planet, Uranus in its own chart and the other chart, it's very strong. What's happening is that the transiting Uranus is at a balance point. His own Uranus is 10 degrees before Mercury, and the transiting Uranus has moved 10 degrees after. It's like a seesaw, where his Uranus is 10 degrees, like, say, to the right of Mercury, and transiting Uranus is 10 degrees to the left. So it's balancing. It's like Mercury's the fulcrum of both Uranuses. This is a special kind of midpoint structure. Now, because Mercury-Uranus is not a theme in Donald Trump's midpoints, it's not the basic theme. It's not the basic storyline. The basic storyline is by the repeating emphasis. Sun, Jupiter, Saturn. Organizing, administrating. Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. The enthusiasm, the excitement about what? 52. We're special. We're going to change things. Revolution. An enthusiastic revolution. They're having a good time. They're creating violence. People are dying, but it's like a big sporting event. But this Mercury-Uranus is something that happens within the context of the theme. What happens with Mercury-Uranus? These midpoint things create a nice, they tend to create a nice flow. Let me read it from the slide. A midpoint structure like the transiting Mercury conjunct the midpoint of the transiting Uranus and natal Uranus with a 1 minute orb. It's right there, exactly in the middle. Plus, it's a stellium. Mercury's 10 degrees away from each one. Very powerful. It's going to add something to the whole experience. It's not defining it because Mercury Uranus is not repeated over and over like Sun Jupiter Uranus and Sun Jupiter Saturn. But it adds something. What does it add? When the same planet in both charts forms midpoints, it's a balance. It's very special with only a 1 minute orb. This results in extreme spontaneity and improvisation. Trump's speech had a spontaneity and a lively, real quality that inspired people. He didn't stumble on his words. One thing led to another, and it had a very effective flow. For good or evil. I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm saying that it flowed. He didn't stumble. It had the Mercury Uranus that just boom, boom, boom. Something unique happened. Something, not necessarily unique, but something just right. Like I said, it's like a match and paper and poof, took off. And this is one of the things that ignited the event, was that his words, just one idea led to another. That kind of being in the zone, Mercury Uranus. And we can always use the time adjust to see exactly when it happens and when it gets triggered and all that. But it's going to be exact, very, very tight orb during his speech. So there it is, my friends. This is what caused the break-in of the White House. 13 vibration in the sky, in Donald Trump's chart, and the resonance and connections that we see between the event chart and the natal chart. That's it. There is an intricate tapestry going on that astrology has not been aware of, and that we are now discovering in the information age. Okay, in part 3, we will look at Ashley Babbitt. We're going to see a Mars-Uranus. Let me give you a preview. We're going to see a Mars-Uranus thing that relates to the fact she got killed. And let me say one more thing. I've got it here somewhere. Let me see if I can find this. Here. Let me just read you this one paragraph, because I showed you this slide, and if you pause and read this, you may wonder about it, because I didn't say anything about it. This last paragraph, latest ideas on midpoint structures. How are midpoint structures different from aspects? Well, together with the other researchers in our vibrational astrology research team, what we're starting to come up with is that midpoint structures show a very high potential, a kind of gift or extreme level of finesse and dexterity, which can be used for good or evil if the person discovers it and unlocks it. Aspects do not need unlocking. So when you see 3 planets like that Mars, Neptune, Mars, Neptune, Saturn, that I talked in part 1 in this series of videos, in the 13 vibration, that's just there. Any aspect pattern, it's just there. But a midpoint structure, midpoint structures are special because there's a perfect resonance. It's a perfect symmetry. But they also need unlocking. They need something to trigger it, to inspire it. They sometimes can remain not completely dormant, but not fully expressed. It's like you have a student in a class and they start painting and, whoa, look at that painting. Or they pick up a musical instrument, or they go to solve a math problem, or it's an experiment in science. And they just, whoa, this kid's got a gift here. It didn't show up. It needs something to awaken it. It's always there. People are not shocked when the kid is good at painting or music or math or whatever it might be. They're not. It's not that it's a shock. It's just that it doesn't. It's not in your face. The aspects are more obvious. You see them straight away. They kind of get expressed in the person more obviously. If they're high vibration aspects, they do not appear in the personality, but they appear in the person's emotions and the way of thinking. So midpoint structures have a special kind of dexterity and refinement and beauty to them, but they do need to be brought out. So I just thought I would mention that. Okay, my friends. The last part, we'll look at one of the people, Ashley Babbitt, who led the charge. I mean, there were dozens or hundreds of people, but she was, in the news that I saw, first person announced to have died in this, and information started coming out. We did find her date of birth, and even without the time, there's I think it's Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, three slow-moving planets get triggered by Mars. Quite fascinating. So I'll show that in the last, third and last video in a series of videos on January 6, 2021. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.